So we look at the inventory related cost. Number one, we have what we call the purchase cost. Then number two, we have the ordering cost. Number three, we have what we call the holding cost. And then we have the shortage cost or the stock out cost. Now, the purchase cost is the cost or the amount paid to acquire the ownership of the item. Then the ordering cost is the cost incurred whenever a company makes an order. Yeah, for example, the cost of printing and preparing the order document, freight charges, transport cost, off-roading cost, all that. And then holding cost is the cost incurred whenever the goods are held in the store, such as the warehouse rent, also the storekeeper's wages, obsolescence, theft, all that. And then number four, we have what we call the shortage cost. Now, also holding cost is also known as the carrying cost. So that is also known as the carrying cost. Then shortage cost is also known as the stock out cost. Now, the shortage cost, and this refers to the benefits foregone or the cost incurred whenever a customer fails to get the required item. That's what we call the shortage cost. So now let's discuss that, starting with the first one. Number one is the purchase cost, and this is the actual amount paid to acquire the ownership of the item. Then number two, we have is the ordering cost. And what's ordering cost? There are costs incurred whenever an order is placed, e.g. the cost of preparing and printing order documents, freight cost, transport cost, off-roading cost, etc. Then we have the holding cost. What's a holding cost? Now, holding cost is a cost incurred whenever inventory is held in the store. Yeah, e.g. the cost of capital. Most of this how you get the holding cost. Now, holding cost, you'll be taking the cost of capital, then you price. So you think that is the cost incurred whenever the inventory is held in the store, e.g. cost of capital. We also have the warehouse rent, insurance, storekeeper's wage, theft, obsolescence, etc. And then lastly, we have the shortage cost or the stock out cost. And this is the benefit foregone whenever the customer fails to get the required item. Can you write in bracket? Opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. It's also known as the opportunity cost. So those are the costs which pertains to the inventory management. Then you look at the inventory control system. We have two systems of inventory control. One, what we call the economic order quantity. Economic order quantity. The economic batch quantity. That is ABQ. Now, the difference between the two is that for the economic order quantity, now this one is applied by the manufacturer, sorry, by the trading companies. One is applied by the trading companies. The ABQ is applied by the manufacturing. It's applied manufacturing companies. So those are the difference between the two. And we start with the first one. That's the order quantity. Now, economic order quantity is saying that it's applied by the trading companies. And EOQ refers to the quantity that can be purchased at the most economical cost, not at the cheapest cost, but the quantity that can be purchased at the most economical cost. And then the EOQ model is classified into two. We have what we call the deterministic EOQ, and then we have what we call the stochastic. Yeah, the stochastic EOQ. Stochastic EOQ. Yeah. The difference is that for deterministic EOQ, this is applied where all the inventory related costs are well known in advance. So that means is applied under the certain condition. But stochastic EOQ is applied where the factor affecting the inventory-related cost, they are not constant. They keep on changing. So therefore, these one are the uncertainty condition. And that uncertainty is what now brings about the shortage. The shortage cost. So for deterministic EOQ, we are saying that is applied where the factors affecting the inventory-related cost are well known in advance. So for example, the demand is known in advance, the purchase price is known in advance, ordering cost is known in advance. So therefore, in this case, under certain conditions, we cannot suffer the shortage cost because shortage cost comes when there is shortage in the number. And if the demand was well known in advance, in this case, we won't suffer that. So that means when determining the total cost under deterministic, we don't factor in the shortage cost. The shortage cost will only be applicable under the stochastic EOQ. So now let's discuss that. So we are looking at the inventory control system. Number one, we have the economic order quantity. And this is the quantity which can be purchased at the most economical cost. An EOQ model is applied by the trading company, and the model is divided into two. So we have the deterministic EOQ and we have the stochastic EOQ. We start with the deterministic EOQ. This is applied where all the inventory-related costs are certain and remain unchanged over the analysis period. So that means they remain constant over the analysis period. And what are some of the assumptions? One is that the demand is well known in advance and it will remain constant. Then number two, lead time is well known in advance. Lead time. What do you mean by lead time? Now, lead time is the duration between ordering and delivery. So, for example, if you request for something now, you order something now, and then it takes 2 hours. Now, that 2 hours is what we call the lead time. If you make an order and then it be delivered after 3 days, so that means your lead time is 3 days. So, lead time is the duration between the ordering and delivery. Good. Another assumption is that it assumes there is no shortage cost, hence no stock out cost. Also assumes that the purchase cost is constant. Also, the ordering cost remains constant. And how do we evaluate EOQ for this model? Now, this is how we evaluate the EOQ model. Inventory evaluation and the EOQ. Number one, how do we determine the optimal order quantity? Now, the optimal order quantity is our economic order quantity. And this I will get the EOQ. To determine the economic order quantity, take 2ds over h, you get the square root. But then number two, how do we get the number of annual orders? Number of annual orders. That one is denoted by n. To determine the number of annual orders, you take the annual demand, you divide by EOQ. Number three, how do you determine the reorder level? Now, reorder level, this is a level whereby the company now decide they need to make another order. Yeah, so that's what we call the reorder level. And to get the reorder level, you take the demand, you multiply by the lead time. But in case the company maintains what we call the safety stock, yeah, in case of safety stock, remember say that the safety stock is the number of units above the normal demand. So in case the company maintains a safety stock or the buffer stock, to determine the reorder level, you take the daily demand times the lead time, and then we add the safety stock. And then number four, how do we get the cost of predicting error? Cost of predicting error, that's what we call COP. Now, to get the cost of predicting error is the difference between, to get COP, you take the actual total cost actual total cost minus the optimal. How do we get the total cost? So to get the total cost, yeah, we have said that we have 4 inventory-related costs. One is the purchase cost, ordering cost, holding cost, and the shortage cost. But you said that under deterministic EOQ, there is no shortage cost because the demand is well known in advance. So therefore, the total cost will be made up of number 1, the purchase cost plus the ordering cost plus the holding cost, which is equivalent to get the total cost. To get the purchase cost, you take annual demand, you multiply by the cost. To get the ordering cost, first of all, you get the number of order, annual demand of a fixed ordering cost, then you add the holding cost. So to get the holding cost, you take the EOQ divided by 2 to get the average, and then you multiply by the holding cost. But in case the company maintains safety stock, if the company maintains safety stock, to get the holding cost, this is what you do. You take the economic order quantity, you divide by 2, you get the average, and then you add the value of the safety stock. Safety stock, and then you multiply by H. So where what is B, what is C, what is S, what is Q, and what is H. Annual demand. They are not that D is always the annual demand. Even if you're given the daily demand, you convert it into annual demand. Then C is the purchase cost. Yeah, the purchase cost per unit. S, the fixed ordering cost per order. Q is our EOQ, and H is our holding cost. And how do you get the holding cost? If you're not given the holding cost, you take the cost of capital, you multiply by the purchase cost. You multiply by the purchase cost. So that's how you evaluate EOQ. So I want us to do that illustration. Illustration 1, I told that a company has an annual demand of 15,000. So that's our D. Our annual demand is 15,000 units. Each costs 80 shillings. So C is 80 shillings. Fixed cost per order is 2,500. So the fixed cost per order is 2,500, while the cost of capital is 20%. So in the cost of capital is 20%, now that one will give us the holding cost. Now the holding cost will take the cost of capital, which is 20% of the purchase cost, which is 80. And that means per unit we have the 60. That's how we get the holding cost. We take the cost of capital times the purchase cost. The company works for 300 days in a year and has a lead time of 7 days. So that means whenever they make an order, it takes 7 days for it to be delivered. Required. Number 1 is to get the optimal order size. 1 is to get the optimal order size. Now, our optimal order size is our EOQ. How do we get EOQ? So it's 2DS over H. Take the square. So it's this is our annual demand. Our annual demand is 15,000. Then you multiply by S. S is the fixed ordering cost, which is 2,500. Then you divide by the holding cost of 16. That's 2165. So that means whenever we make an order, we'll be ordering in batches of 2165 units. So that's what it means, that whenever you'll be making an order, you press an order of 2165 units. And then number two, we get the number of annual orders. How do we get the number of annual orders? That's our aim. So to get the number of annual orders, we take the annual demand, you divide by EOQ. Now, we have an annual demand of 15,000. That's the demand per annum. And every time we'll be ordering in batches of 2165. Now the question is, we'll order how many times in a year? Sorry? You make 7 orders. Good. Number 3, the reorder level. So how do we get the reorder level? So reorder level, we say that you take the daily demand times the lead time. And how do you get the daily demand? So we already have our D. D is our annual demand. So you take 15,000. Then you divide by the number of days in a year to determine the daily demand, of which you're told that the company works for 300 days in a year. Once you get the daily demand, then you multiply by the lead time. For that, the lead time is 7 days. So we have 350. So that means whenever your stock level reaches 350, just place another order. Because if you make an order, it will give you, it will take you 7 days. So what happens? Make sure you have the stock that can be able to sustain the company for that period of 7 days. So that means whenever it reaches 370 and 350, you make another order. So that by the time the new order will be delivered, you'll be having at least 350 to sell during that period. And then lastly, number 4, the cost of prediction error. If the actual cost of capital and ordering cost were 18% and 3,000 respectively, so you determine the COP. So how do we get the COP? We see that cost of predicting error is the difference between the actual total cost minus the optimal cost. We read that again. So you're told that cost of predicting error, if the actual cost of capital, so now the cost of capital will give us the holding cost. If the actual cost of capital and the ordering cost were 18% and now holding, we see that you take the cost of capital times the purchase cost. Now purchase cost is 80. What if now the cost of capital is not 20? Now it's 18. So you take 8 times 80. So how much will be the actual holding cost? 14.4. And then in that case, you assume that the ordering cost now is not 25, now it's 3,000. So our cost will vary by how much? That's what we call the cost of predicting an error. So how do we get the total cost? That to get the total cost, you'll take the purchase cost plus the ordering cost plus the holding cost, which is equivalent to total cost is equal to purchase cost is the annual demand times the cost per unit, number of orders, you take D over Q, you get the number of orders, which is 7. Then you multiply by the cost per order. Then to get the holding cost, you take the economic order quantity, divide by 2 to get the average. Then you multiply by the holding cost per unit. So in that case, we want to get the actual total cost. So to get the actual total cost, annual demand does not change. 10,000, each costing 80. This annual demand, which is 15,000, you divide by Q. Q is our EOQ, which is 2165, so that you get the number of orders. Once you get the number of orders, you multiply by the actual ordering cost per order. And in this case, the actual is 3,000. As Q is the quantity, the EOQ, you divide by 2 to get the average. Then you multiply by the actual holding cost. Now, actual holding cost in this case will be 14.24. You're getting an amount of 1236. Then you compare that against the optimal cost. Now, how do we get the optimal cost? Now, for us to determine the optimal cost, you need to recompute your EOQ using now the actual data. So you recompute EOQ using the actual data. See now in this case, when determining the total actual cost, our EOQ, we have used what we had computed. But in this case now, to determine our optimal cost, you recompute now the EOQ, now using the actual data, whereby EOQ is 2ds over h, then you get is 2. Annual demand does not change, it's 15,000. But now S, the fixed holding cost now in this case is 3,000. Our actual holding cost or the cost of capital is 18%. Cost now is 14.4. Okay? 2,500. So we get the total cost. The formula is the same. Formula does not change. So the annual demand, which is 15,000, each at the cost of 80. Our now has changed. Our Q is 2,500. Actual ordering cost is 3,000 plus Q. Our Q has changed now. Our EOQ is 2,500. You divide by 2 to get the average. You multiply by the actual holding cost. Actual holding cost per unit is. Let's have a computer also. What are we getting? So therefore, the cost of predicting error, you see that you take the actual total cost, 73, you minus the optimal cost, and you will get this. So that's the variation. You can look at that for 2 minutes. Then I want you to be trying this question. Try this question now. Handout question 2, page 1. Handout question 2, page 1. So I want to give you a hint on that. So question 2 to that. A company has a weekly demand of 200. So we need to get D. Remember, it's that D is annual demand. If you are given the weekly demand, this should always be annual demand. You convert. So if the weekly demand is 200, you multiply by the number of weeks in a year, of which in 1 year we have how many weeks? 52. So how much is that? 10,400. Each costing 150. So C, it's 150. Fixed cost per order is 1,800. Fixed cost per order, that is S. S, it's 1,800. While insurance premium is 8% of the inventory value. Yeah, mostly if for those companies that deal with the high value assets, sometimes they insure them when they install. So that's part of the holding cost. So holding cost, we are told that while the insurance premium is 8% of the inventory value. So to a holding cost, you take 8% of 150. Then you add obsolescence is valued at 4. Obsolescence is part of the holding cost. Yeah, so you also add 4 shillings. While the storage space is charged at 6 shillings per unit. Also, that one is part of the holding cost. It's part of the warehouse rent, an amount of 6. That's how you get your holding cost. The company works for 52 weeks in a year and has a read time of 5 weeks. Okay. So first of all, give me this. How much is that? This one is 22. Required the optimal order size. Now, optimal order size is EOQ. So EOQ would be 2DS over H. This square. So it's 2. Annual demand is 10,400. S is 1,800. Holding cost is 22. Then you get the average. So that means whenever we'll be making an order, we order in batches of 1305. Then number B, they need the number of annual orders. So annual orders N is D over Q. Our annual demand is 10,400. And whenever we are making an order, we order in batches of 1305. So that means in 1 year, you order how many times? 8 times. Then number C, the reorder level. And now this is now what I want to explain here. Remember, you see that reorder level, you'll take the daily demand times the lead time. But in this case, we are not given the daily demand. So what we have, we are given the weekly demand. Also, the lead time we are not given in days. If you look at the lead time, we are given in weeks. So that means in this case, when determining the reorder level, they don't take days, they take weeks. So what you do, instead of now dealing with the daily demand, you work with the weekly demand times the lead time. Since the lead time, you are given the number of weeks. So you take the weekly demand, and the weekly demand was 200. Then the lead time, they take 5 weeks. So that means you need stock enough to cover. If you make an order now, you need stock enough to cover the next 5 weeks. And that means you get an amount of 1,000. So whenever it gets to 1,000, you make another order. And then number D, you get COP. So COP is the difference between the actual cost and the optimal. So the COP, if the actual purchase cost per unit is 25. So in that case, it's only this one that will be changing. Then you compare the cost of the two. So I wanted to insist on this, that this is the annual demand, regardless of whatever given the number of days. Then now you know how to get the reorder. Okay. So now I want us to look at how do we evaluate inventory when you are given a discount. Given a discount, how will you evaluate? So presence of a discount. Let's go back to our notes. presence of discount. Now, in business practice, there are three main forms of discount. One, we have what we call the cash discount. You know, when you have cash, give you the bargaining power. Cash discount is a discount you get when you pay in cash. Then there is trade discount. Now, trade discount is the discount you get out of the negotiation. And then we have what we call the quantity discount. If you buy more than 10 units, I'll give you a discount of this. Yeah. Now, for the purpose of inventory control, the relevant discount is the quantity discount. Discount, now listen up here. You know why you're evaluating the discount. Now, for an individual, discount is always good, right? What about for the company? Now, for the company, discount is not always good. I have not said it's not good, but it's not always good. Why? Because what happens when you are given a discount, the purchase cost reduces. That means you pay less. But you are given a discount because you have bought more. If you buy more, it will increase the holding cost. So now in this case, you have to weigh the benefit or what you are saving here against the additional you're incurring. That's why I think that for the company, discount is not always good. It's not always good. For example, let me give you a scenario. For example, you buy and sell mattresses. And then you go to the industrial area, you buy 5 pieces. And then the Muhindi gives you a discount. If you buy over 70, I'll give you a discount. And you see that you'll be saving 10,000. So for example, you buy 70 pieces. And from that transaction, you save like 10,000, of which the business is very good. So that's a discount you have received. But now, you never did your calculation well. The transport vehicle you have, maybe the maximum it can be able to accommodate is 60 pieces at one go. But now you have purchased how much? 70, and you have enjoyed a discount of how much? 10. But now this delivery lorry can only maybe carry 60. So that means you have to go for another trip. Now, if you go for another trip, so there's an additional cost incurred. Yes. Also, assume where you store this, the space you have, maybe you never made your calculation well. That means the space you have cannot be able to accommodate all the 70 mattresses. So that means, for example, it can only even be able to accommodate 50. So what about the other 20? That means you need to hire another additional space, or you need to hire a soldier to guard the remaining one that were not able to feed the store. So you see, in this case, you're incurring an additional cost. So in that case, you have to evaluate. Yeah, because once you get the discount, yes, the purchase cost will reduce, but holding cost will increase. So you need to compare the two. So you're saying that discount makes the purchase cost reduce, but it may increase the holding cost. And quantity discount is divided into two. So we have what we call a single discount. And then number two, we have what we call a multiple discount. What's the difference between the two? Now, for the single discount, this is where, for example, you do that. If you buy over 50, you get a discount of 10. Yeah, so that is what we call a single discount. But for multiple, this way you do that. If you buy about 50 to 60, I'll give you a discount of 5%. If you buy between 61 to 70, I'll give you a discount of 8%. If you buy 70 maybe to 80, I'll give you 10%. Now that's what we call the multiple discount. For a single discount, you get only one rate, regardless of the number of the units, provided you exceed a given threshold. Good. So let's start with the first one, single discount. Single discount. Now, this is where a constant rate of discount is given or offered irrespective of the number of units purchased, irrespective of the number. And the following steps are followed when evaluating the discount. So in this case, I don't want to write the step, but it's very simple. You want to determine whether the company should accept or not accept the discount. So what you'll do, you compute the total cost, assuming there is no discount. Then the second step, compute the total cost, now assuming you have accepted the discount, and then try to compare the two costs. So the first step to determine the total cost, assuming there is no discount. Then number two, you compute the total cost now, assuming you have a discount, and then you compare the two. After all, which one will you choose? The one will minimize the cost, because in this case, we're evaluating the inventory cost. For the cost, you minimize.
we're saying that for the single discount, the following steps are followed when evaluating. 1, compute the total cost without discount. Number 2, compute the total cost with discount, and then you compare the cost above. So let's use our handout. Handout page 1. Handout page 1. Question 3. A company has a monthly demand of 2,000 units. So how much is our D? So to get D, what you're given is monthly demand. So it will be 2,000. You multiply by 12, and you get an amount of 24,000. 24,000. Each costing 40. So C is 40. Cost of capital is 15%. So if you're given the cost of capital, now that gives us the holding cost. So that to get the holding cost, you take the cost of capital times the purchase cost. So the cost of capital is 15%. So we'll take 15% of the purchase cost, which is 40, of which you get an amount of 6. What do you mean by the holding cost? If you're given the cost of capital, this is what it means. For example, let's assume that you are dealing with an asset of high value. Maybe you are selling mobile phone, and you bought one phone at 50,000, and you decided to sell it at 70. So that means you paid 50 to acquire that inventory. And then you are told that the cost of capital is 15%. Now, how do you get the holding cost? Now, to get the holding cost, this is the money. This is inventory, right? So that means if you had the liquid cash, you have an opportunity where you can invest 15%, and where you can invest and get a return of how much? 15%. But in this case, your money is tied to the stock item. In business, you have kulalisha pesa. Have you ever had someone in business anasema kuna pesa zimelala mahali? Yeah, because in this case, your cash is tied up in stock. So that means if you have the liquid cash, you could have invested to earn a return of 15%. So when you're holding that item in the stock, how much are you losing? That's what we call the holding cost. The cost of capital is 15%, and 1 unit, you had purchased it at 40. So that means 1 unit you hold in the stock, you're losing 6%. Good. Then you are told that while the fixed cost per order is 6,000. So S, it's 6,000. For the purchase of 9,000 or more, so you're given the threshold. If you buy 9,000 and more or more units, a discount of 20% per unit is offered. Determine the optimal order size. In this case, we are given the discount. So first of all, you need to determine whether you should accept or reject the discount. And how do you determine that? First of all, determine the total cost with no discount. But first of all, let's get the EOQ. And the current EOQ is 2DS over H. You get the square root. So these are annual demand, which is 24,000. S is the fixed ordering cost, which is 6,000. You divide by H. H is the holding cost, which is 6. Then you get the square. So how much is our current economic order quantity? Sorry? 6928 units. So the current optimal order level is 6928. So we want to determine whether to accept or reject the discount. So the first step you'll do, you determine the total cost without discount. And without discount, you see that to get the total cost, you'll take the purchase cost, which is D, annual demand, you multiply by the cost per unit. Then you take the ordering cost, D over Q to get the number of annual orders. Then you multiply by the ordering cost per order, plus the holding cost, Q over 2, you get the average holding cost. Our annual demand we have is 24,000, each costing 40, so that we get the purchase cost. D is the annual demand, which is 24. You divide by EOQ, 6928, so that we get the number of annual orders. And then you multiply by the cost per order. And the fixed ordering cost is 6,000. plus EOQ is 69.28, you get the average. For the holding cost, you must always get the average. That's why you divide by 2. Then you multiply by the holding cost per average unit, and the holding cost is 6. Sorry? 1 million? 001. 560. Then you compute now the total cost. Total cost now with discount. Now, if you accept the discount, we have been told that. Let's read that again. The last sentence. For the purchase of 9,000 or more, so that means our new Q will be 9,000. For purchase of 9,000 or more units, a discount of 20% per unit is offered. So that means the cost will change. We are given a discount of 20. That means we'll only pay 80% of the current cost of 40. Maybe an amount of 32. Now, if the cost changes, also the holding cost will change, because the holding cost is the cost of capital times the purchase cost. Now, once you receive the discount, the purchase cost has reduced. So it will be 15% now of that too. So now let's determine now the total cost with discount. Annual demand has not changed, so it will be 24,000 times the cost. Now the cost is that 2 plus D over Q. Our annual demand we have is 24, but now our EOQ have changed. Our EOQ is 9,000, and then you multiply by S. S does not change, it's 6,000. Then Q over 2, our new EOQ is 9,000. You divide by 2 to get the average. You multiply by the holding cost, and the holding cost is what? Right? Now this is the total cost without discount, but this one is discount. Should we accept or reject the discount? Yeah, it should accept the discount. Take 1 minute and we do the multiple discount. So now let's look at multiple discount. Multiple discounts. Now, this is where different rates of discount are offered at different purchase rates, and the following steps are followed. So what are some of the steps followed under multiple discount? So we have steps followed. Number one, you compute EOQ at each break. So you compute the EOQ, that's the first step. Then step number two, you make a decision. If EOQ, let's be here, A, it's the break, that one you should ignore. Yeah, because that one will not be making, it will not be feasible, will not be making an economical sense. Then number B, if EOQ is below the break, use the lower level or lower limit. But if the EOQ is in between a given range, so the computed EOQ. And then from there, now once you have that, number three, evaluate using now the total. Those are the steps. Step number one, determine the EOQ. Now that EOQ is what will help you to determine which EOQ to use when determining the total cost. So now let's use our handout. Sorry? The break. Sorry, no. I'll come to show you. I'll come to show you what I mean by that break. Let's do question number 4 of the handout. Illustration, we do question number 4 of page 1. Question number 4 of page 1. A company has an annual demand of 10,000 and ordering cost is given as 500. So we have D and we have S. Cost of capital is given as 12%. So if you're given the cost of capital, use that one to determine the holding cost, which is 12% of the purchase price. The following data is also provided. Now, you are given the ranges of what we call now the break. Between 0 to 999 units, the price will be 50. If you buy between 1,000 to 1999, you get a discount of 5. That means you only pay 45 shillings. If you buy between or 2,000 and 29.99, you get an additional discount of 3 shillings. You only pay 42 per unit. And then if you purchase 3,000 and above, you pay that 6. Determine the optimal order rate. How to determine the optimal order rate? So you see that the first step you determine is the EOQ. So here we have the prices. So 50. But instead of prices, we use the break. Range of the break. Then you determine the EOQ. And then from there, now we can comment. So between 0 to 999, 1,000 to 99, 2,000, 29.99, and then 3,000 and determine EOQ. EOQ is 2ds over h, you get the square root, so it's 2. This is the annual demand. Annual demand has not changed, so the annual demand we have is 10,000. Then you also multiply by S. S is the fixed ordering cost, and the ordering cost we have is 500. all of it, you divide by the holding cost. So for the holding cost, we are given the cost of capital. The cost of capital is 12%. So we'll take 0.12 of the purchase cost. So between 0 to 999, the price is 50 shillings. The other one is 45 shillings. We have 42 shillings. We have 36 shillings. And then we get the square root. Hey, Daniel, can you engage your calculator? Compute one of that. Mary, give me what you have. Siangalie sana, haita change. 64,550. That one does not make economical sense. So recompute again. 1291. Sorry? 1509. We already have the first one. Or last. 1551. 21. 1361. Then we comment. Now, this our EOQ, the first one, 1291. Does it lie below, in between, or above the break? So it's above the break. So if it's above the break, that one does not make any sense. So therefore, it's above the break, you do what? You ignore. So therefore, you cannot buy between 0 to 999. Because if the economic order quantity, you need to purchase 1299, and therefore they tell you to order below that, that one does not make any sense. Then 1361, is it below, in between, or above? In between. If it's in between, we use the computed EOQ. So our EOQ now will be 1361. That's the optimal order quantity. That's what we should order. 1409, below, above, or in between? It's below. If it's below the break, we use the lower limit. So our EOQ, this is the lower range, this is the upper range. So the minimum we should order is an amount of 2,000. 1521, below, above, or in between? Below 1,000, so it's below. So if it's below, the EOQ, you see that use the lower limit. And the lower limit we have is? Then from there, now we can evaluate using the total cost. Just do it here. That step we evaluate using total cost. So that to get the total cost, we take the purchase cost, which is annual demand times cost. D over Q, get the number of orders, we multiply by the ordering cost per order, then Q over 2H. So now this one we have ignored. So we're evaluating the cost for the three. So between 1,000 to 99, 2,000 to 59, and 3,000, and of which you are giving the price. So between 1,000 to 1999, you'll pay an amount of 5. Here you'll pay an amount of 2. Here you'll pay an amount of 36. So determine the cost. Annual demand does not change, it's 10,000. Then you multiply by C. So the cost here is 45. Here the cost will be 42. Here the cost will be 36 due to discount. Then you add the ordering cost. Annual demand we have is 10,000. Now you divide by EOQ. EOQ between 1,000 to 1999, the EOQ is 1361. 2,000 to 299, the EOQ will be 2,000, and then 3,000 and above, it will be an amount of 3,000. Yeah, not what we computed here, no. So, and then from there, you get the number of orders, you multiply by the cost per order. Cost per order was 500, right? Then you add Q. Our EOQ here is 1361, you divide by 2. This was 2,000, you divide by 2. This was 3,000, you divide by 2. And then you multiply by the holding cost. So the holding cost, remember the cost of capital was 12%. So it will be 0.12 of the purchase cost. The purchase price here is 45. This is 42. This is 36. Let's complete that. Seven. What is 7? Then for the last one, what do you get? Yes. 368. 140. Now, by comparing those costs, our objective is to minimize the cost. Which one will minimize our cost? The third one. So the minimum cost we have is 368. So what does that mean? So you should advise them, they buy 3,000 and above each at that 6. So in that case, the optimal order size, in that case, the EOQ is 3,000. Or you can advise them that they should order 3,000 head. That's what we advise them. So take 2 minutes. Huh? First of all, understand this. This is the most important thing to understand. When to ignore, when to use the lower limit, and when to use the computed EOQ before you do the expression. May 2015. Question 5A. May 2015, question 5A. May 2015, question 5A. Ikawa Limited is reviewing its purchasing policy of one of its raw material. Can you underline that? Purchasing policy of raw material. So that means what they are managing here is the raw material. Ikawa Limited is reviewing the purchasing policy of one of its raw material as a result of reduction in its production requirement. The material which is used evenly throughout the year is used in only one of the company's products, the production of which is currently 12,000 units per annum. 12,000 per annum. What is that? That is D, and that's very wrong. That's very wrong. You see, in this way, there's something I have told you to analyze. Are you together? Even that is not river. So they're evaluating the purchase of raw material. Are you together? This raw material is what will be used to make the product, of which I know that the product demand is the one which is 12,000. But for that, we are not focusing about the product. The product, we are the one manufacturing. Now, in this case, we are evaluating the stock of raw material. Read that again, the second sentence. The material which is used evenly. So see, they are focusing on material. The material which is used evenly throughout the year is used in only one of the company's products, the production of which is currently 12,000 units per annum. Each finished unit of the product requires 0.4 kilogram of material. So that means the production is 12,000, but these are the units you are producing. We want what we are purchasing, right? To make one unit, you require how many kgs of material? 0.4. 4,800. Then you are told that each unit of product requires 0.4 kilograms of the material, of which 20% of the material is lost in the production process. So now you want to determine B. B is the annual demand. Now, this is what we need. The annual production or the demand for the product is 12, but we're not evaluating that product. To make that product, we require the raw material. Now, that raw material is what we need to purchase. That's what we're evaluating, of which to make one unit requires 0.4. So that means to make 12,000 units, you require 4,800 kilograms. Are you together? But that's not what you will purchase. Why? Because 20% will be used or will be lost in production. So if you require a net of 48, you have to purchase more. So if this is what we need to make this 12,000, but of which we are told that you purchase of which 20% will be lost. So that means this 48 kgs is equivalent to 80%. What about 100%? 57? 57, 60. We have 57, 60. Yes. And you will compute that again. Not 20%. Cannot be 57, 60. Is it 6,000? Yes, 6,000 kgs. We need to purchase the raw material. Don't purchase 48. Because if you purchase 48 and 20% will be lost in the production, you'll not be able to make all this 12. So that means if you require 48, that one will be net. That's what we call net. It's equivalent to it. So you need to purchase 6,000 kgs so that in the production, there'll be some waste of 20%, so that now you have a net of 40. So that means you need to purchase more, and we need to purchase 6,000. Now that 6,000 is our annual demand of the raw material goods. Then we are told that purchases can be made in multiple of 500, not production, purchases. Purchases can be made in multiple of 500 kgs with a minimum purchase quantity being 1,000. What does that mean? The minimum you can buy is 1,000. So it can be 1,000, 15, 2,000, 25, 3,000. Are you understanding what the examiner means? I'm ready for you. Purchases can be made in multiple of 500 kgs with a minimum purchase order quantity being 1,000. Then the cost of the raw material depends upon the purchase order quantity. So you're given the EOQ. So you're given the order quantity, that's the EOQ. If you buy 1,000, the cost will be 100. If you buy 15, 98. 2,000, 96.5. You see, in this case, that's what we call the multiple discount. Added information. The cost of pressing and handling each order is 90. That's what we call the ordering cost, S. Ordering cost per order. The cost of pressing and handling each order is 90, of which 40 is an apportionment. We see that apportionment means fixed cost, or irrelevant cost. Do you remember when you're doing this? You see that under non-routine decision, fixed costs are irrelevant. That means, regardless of how many units you buy, the fixed cost does not change. Are you together? So, and you see that among those non-routine decisions, even inventory control is part of non-routine decision. They are decisions which are not frequently made. So therefore, in case of any fixed cost, that one does not affect, because that one won't affect, even regardless whether you buy 6,000, 10,000, that one does not change. So you're told that the cost of pressing and handling each order is 90 shillings, of which 40 is an apportionment of the cost, which are not expected to be affected in the short term by the number of order pressed. So that means that 40 shillings is irrelevant. So that means S, it's 90, but 40 shillings is fixed, will not be affected regardless of number of units. So that means the cost that will vary by the number of units is an amount of, that means the ordering cost is 50. Number 2, the annual holding cost, that's H. The annual holding cost of stock is 90 shillings per unit of average stock, of which only 40 shillings is expected to be affected in the short term by the amount of the stock held. So how much will be our holding cost then? It will be an amount of, is it 40 or 50? 40. Let's read that again. The annual holding cost of stock is 90, right? On average, of which only 40 is expected to be affected. So it's 40 that will change, right? Together. So that 40 is the one that is variable. So that means the other 50 will not change. The other 50 will not be affected because only 40 shillings will be affected. So that means the other 50 will not be affected. Now, what will not be affected is what we call the fixed cost, which is in this case, it's irrelevant. 3, the lead time for the raw material is 1 month. Safety stock of 20 kgs is required. So in this case, they have to maintain the safety stock. Remember, you said that safety stock is the number of units above the average. And whenever you have safety stock, it will affect our holding cost, because that holding cost is EOQ over 2 holding cost. But whenever you have the safety stock, it must be there always. So it will be Q over 2. You get the average, then you add the minimum you should maintain. That's the buffer stock of safety stock of 250, then you multiply by H. Required. Advise the management of Kikao Limited on the purchase order quantity of material that will minimize the total. So which one will be that? So we already have EOQ. Here you don't have to compute, you already given. Can you see the order quantity? Yes, the order quantity. We are given the purchase order quantity. So we can buy 1,000, 15, 2,000, 25, or 3,000 and above. Then from there, we need to evaluate the total cost. We need to evaluate the total cost. And how do we evaluate the total cost? So to get the total cost, number one, there is purchase cost. You see that how do we get the purchase cost? Is D times C. Then we also need to determine the ordering cost. So that to get the ordering cost, it's D over Q S. Then we need the holding cost. And in this case, since we have the safety stock, will be EOQ. You divide by 2, get the average, and then you add the safety stock we are maintaining of 250. Then you add all of them, you get the total cost. Then you make your decision based on the total cost. Let's start with this. So annual demand does not change. Our annual demand was how much? 6,000. Regardless of how many units you order, annual demand has not changed. But now what will change is the cost. If you order 1,000, the cost will be 100. This one will be 98. This one will be 96.5, 95, and this one will be 94. Give me that. Mm-hmm. 582, 588, 588. Oh, 564, 579, 570, 570. Then you determine the ordering cost. So to determine the ordering cost, you take D over Q. Our D is the annual demand, so it's 6,000. That one does not change. Then you divide by the EOQ. Now this is the economic order quantity. So this is 1,000, 15, 2,000, 25, 3,000, so that you get the number of annual orders. Once you get the number of annual orders, you multiply by the cost per order. Cost per order is 50 shillings. Mm-hmm. 100, eh? Yeah, this is 100. It's 300. This one is 150. This one is 120. Then we add the holding cost. So holding cost, we take EOQ. Now this is our EOQ. This was 1,000, 15, 2,000, 25. Then you divide by 2 to get the average. Once you get the average, then you add. They must maintain the safety stock. Yeah, safety stock, you're at number 4. Safety stock of 250 kilograms is required. So you add 250. Once you get the total number of units, then you multiply by the holding cost per unit. And the holding cost per unit is 40 shillings. This one is 30,000. This one is 40,000. Now you can be able to get the total cost. 600, 630, 300. 588 plus 40, you get 628. 628, 200. 579 plus 50, you get 629, and then you add 150. 570 plus 60, you get 640, and then you add 120. Oh, 6, that's not 40, sorry. 6 that one, 20. 564 plus 70. You get 630? Get 634. 634. Now, check out your total cost. Total cost. Select one. Which one did you select? The one with the minimum cost, eh? Yeah. 628,200. So that means in this case, the optimal order quantity they should purchase in batches of 1,500 kgs, of which in that case they'll be given a discount of how much? Each at 90? Is it 98? That's why we're getting like 10 marks. So that's how you evaluate multiple. Yes. That's what have been done. So that's what have been done. In multiple of 500 with a minimum of 1,000. 1,000, you add another 500. 15, you add another 500. 2,000, you add another 500. That's what it means in batches. Are you together? Sorry? No. The minimum. Yes. And that's all about the deterministic EOQ. Yeah, where the factors of the cost affecting the inventory related cost are well known in advance. So our next class will start on stochastic EOQ. Don't want us to start now for the stochastic EOQ.